All right, welcome back. What we're going to be taking a look at here is a process of using both Lightroom and Photoshop in our workflow. We're going to start off with Lightroom, and then we'll eventually move our images into Photoshop. And then we can also take those images in Photoshop and it will automatically save them back into Lightroom if we want that to happen. There's a variety of different workflows in photography. You could go Adobe Bridge to Adobe Camera Raw to Photoshop. You could do Photo Mechanic to Adobe Camera Raw to Photoshop. You could do Lightroom straight into Photoshop. What we're going to be taking a look at on this series is the Lightroom to Photoshop. What you should do, why you should do it. Now, before we get started, the first thing that you'll want to notice I'm using Lightroom Classic up here. That does not mean that this is an old version of the program. If you go to the Adobe Creative Cloud, and I can do that. Now, this can be confusing, but there's a couple different versions of Lightroom. There's a Lightroom desktop, which is made to work off the cloud. All right, you're not really saving your images to the local hard drive of your computer, and it's a different program. It's very similar to the Lightroom Mobile. This one is made to work off a tablet or a phone. This is a desktop, and it is different from Lightroom Classic. Lightroom Classic is used to organize, share, and catalog your images. Lightroom Classic is going to be the version that I'm covering today. So what cataloging does is it remembers just about everything about your images as you import them, as you add information to them, and it allows you to organize them. So you could actually come down here. You'll notice there's a thing called collections, and you can add the images to any collections. Let's say you took pictures of your dog named Fred, and as you take photos, you could just add them to the collection. That way, even though the images reside in separate folders, it's a single location to find all the pictures of your dog. So that's what it does good. The bad part is, and if you see right here, it's got an exclamation mark, and that means I've probably deleted those photos. It can't find the photos anymore. So the way Lightroom Classic works is it remembers the path of where your photos are at. So if you import them to your internal hard drive on your desktop, that's where it's going to think the images are at. If you take your photos and you move them from the desktop to an external hard drive, it's not going to know where the path is anymore, and you'll get this exclamation mark. Now, you can click on the exclamation mark, show it where the new path is, and everything will be good and ready to go again. But it does need to know where that path is located. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to import our images. And there's two different ways to do this. One, we can import directly from an SD, compact flash, CF Express card. It doesn't really make a difference. Or if our images already reside on an external drive or another drive, we can import them or add them to the catalog. So the first method, using a card, it's going to copy the images to the location that you want and add them to the catalog. The second import is just going to add them to the catalog because they're already in the location that you want. So we'll start off with the first one. So in the library mode, if you were to just put in your card, and I've already put mine in, the window should pop up, and that window would look just like this. Okay, this is our import window. So inside of here, we have a couple of different options. We can move the image by changing your raw files from an NEF file or a CR2 to a DNG, which stands for digital negative, which I won't be doing here. That is one option. We can copy the images, which means we're going to take them from this location, the SD card, and move them to another hard drive somewhere else and add them to a catalog. Or we can just click add. And what add means, and I can't do it here because I've selected this card, but if I come in here and I go to where my images are located, if I just want to add my images to the catalog, I need to go to my location where the images are at. This is the folder, and it recognizes the photo. And now it will allow me to just add them. So I'm not going to move them from the location that they're at, I'm just adding them to the catalog. And that's really easy. The only thing that I would need to do is select the images, and you could either deselect or select any images. We have a check all or an uncheck all right here. So anything checked is going to be added to that catalog. I have the option to change how my previews are done. I use standard in general, but we have minimal embedded with a sidecar, 1-to-1, and standard. But I'm just going to be using standard. We could build smart previews. We could set this so it will not import duplicates. So if you don't know if you've already imported your images, if you click this little button, it won't import images that have already been imported. It knows that I've used this before, and notice how it's deselected it. I don't want that, so I'm going to turn it off. We could add to a second location. So if we wanted to move the images to a second location, we can do that. And we can also add metadata. So you can see I already have a metadata template. I'll show you how to use the metadata templates when we go to copy. But basically, I would just come down here and put import, and then boom, it's going to add these images to the catalog. It's not moving them from the location that they're at. It's just adding them to the Lightroom catalog so it knows what the photos are of, what their names are, all that information, so I can find them. You can see up here, it's building standard previews. It's going to take a little bit of time for it to do that. All right, so that's step number one. If we want to import them from the card, it's going to be done a little bit differently. I'm going to come up here and go to import. It's going to bring us back to that import window. And this time we're going to get copy. So it notices my card. It's saying this here. I want this folder. It recognizes the photos. Notice if I put don't import suspected images, it will not import any of these because it knows that I've imported them already. But in this case, we don't want to do that. Over here is where the images are at. So in this case, they're on an EOS digital compact flash card. That's where I'm locating the files from. These are the files that I want and the ones that I want to move to here. We are using a grid format, but I could use a single format, but I'm just going to leave it in grid. Anything with a check mark is going to be imported. So you can check or uncheck all images down here. You can also sort these images by changing this sort. We're not going to do that. You can control the thumbnail size by sliding this little slider down here. The important part here is what we do in this location. Workflow is super important in photography because I get emails all the time of how can I organize my photos after the fact? And they want an automated process, and it just doesn't work that. You need to do it from the beginning. So pay attention to what I'm doing. So the location of where we want the photos to go. In this case, these images are going to a pictures folder on a hard drive, which is not what I want. So I'm going to choose another destination, and I'm going to choose an SSD where I move all my photos to. So the root, which is the top level of this SSD, I just clicked on that. You could do other destination. I see my thing right here, but I could go other destination and then come down here and find that hard drive, which is right here. I can click on that and hit choose, and then it's going to be in that location. It will show that. This is that path that I was talking about before. So we see Macintosh hard drives, volumes, and then the location or name of the SSD. This is the path that it's following. Build preview. So that's just when we view our image, what's the quality of that image? We have different options here. I'm just going to use standard throughout this video series. We have different options here. We can build smart previews. We can not import suspected duplicates like we were saying. We can move this to 2 locations. So instead of moving to just here, I could move it to another location. I am not going to do that. I could also add these images to a collection, which we saw and we'll go over later. The important thing here is we want to rename everything. If you look at these, and these are just images I downloaded, they have this very uninformative slug line. And that's not going to help me find this image because none of that information means anything. So what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to come over here and go to custom name and sequence, meaning I want to give it a custom name and then I want to number it. The first one's going to be 1, the second one's going to be 2, the next one's going to be 3, just like that. So we're going to call this Lightroom to Photoshop. So now this is going to be called Lightroom to Photoshop 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just like that. The next thing that we want to do is develop settings. We don't want to add any develop settings or presets to this image. The next thing that I'm going to do is add a metadata template. So this is information that you can add to each image. So if I click on this and I go to edit presets, we can see I can come in here and edit that preset. And what this does is have information that I can add to each image. So I have my name, my website, all that kind of information. You can read through here and add all that stuff. I will tell you, in general, I fill out a ton of information. That's because I do a lot of photojournalistic work and we need to have that. This stuff is super helpful. I'm not going to go in depth to what is in the metadata template, but I do feel what I want to fill out. This will add that information to every single photo that you use. I save the preset and then I can just add that information every time I import into Lightroom. I can also add specific keywords. So I'm just going to add portraits to this because most of what this site has is portrait images. But any keywords that you wanted to add to your images for either being able to be found through the cataloging system, or you might want to use for search engine optimization, can be done here. Destination. This is where your images are going to be moved, but specifically the folder. So here we told it the location. Here we're going to tell it to make a folder and put these images inside this folder. So right here I have into one folder. By default, it goes by date. Do not use by date. Do into one folder. And then I'm going to give it a name. And so I will call this LR to PS, which is Lightroom to Photoshop. And I'm going to give it a date. So we will just say 05. And you need to use dash. If you use a backslash, it will turn it red. I'll do it here. So we'll turn backslash. You can see right here, it's turned it red. It does not like that character. So you can use a dash or an underscore, and then we'll just say 15-2023. So always do the date. It just makes it easy to find stuff. You need to have what the images are of and the date. You can add other information if you want into one folder, and now you're ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and click import. And remember, this is going to do two things. It is going to move these to that new location, which was the SSD, and add them to the catalog. So that is the end of step number 1 of Lightroom to Photoshop catalog. We're going to end this video tutorial here. Look, it is going to be more beneficial for you to practice this step and get used to it. I like to keep my videos shorter and to the point. I would hope that you would practice them and learn how to do these functions first and then move on. If you watch how to do everything, you're basically going to forget more than you've picked up. So that is going to be the end of video number 1. If you found this video helpful, it would be great if you could give it a thumbs up. If you have any comments or questions, you can always leave those below. And don't forget to subscribe to see more videos in this series.